Today we're looking when to buy back lithium miners on the ASX. Leaders in lithium break out when the whole group is on trend together, which makes sense, but most people wouldn't believe just how important that group tailwind is to hitting those big runs and massive profit targets. And it's showing a buying opportunity now. So we're going to cover some proprietary scans and filters that we use to monitor leaders on the ASX, and you can comment below to let us know how you select your lithium trades. We're going to start off with this first chart here. This chart that we're going to zoom in on shows the top 6 lithium leaders against the average of all the lithium exposed companies on the ASX. The top 6 is the orange line, the blue line is the average relative strength of all of the 70 odd lithium companies that we have listed here on the ASX. Now the top 6, what we see here is that the top 6, that orange line, is not influencing the average of the group, it's the group that's allowing the run. So we can see on the far right hand side here, this dropping blue line shows that lithium stocks are tanking, and that's no news because the market is tanking as well. So there's no surprises there. What we want to be looking for is that turning point in this fall of when we want to buy back, and we're going to use the past 2 years that we see on the chart here to give us an indication of how and why those turning points work and what to look for across the group. We're going to use 3 periods here. The 3 best times to trade lithium shares over the last 2 years are in these circles here. There's one in the middle, the big burgundy circle, there's a green and a red one to the right. Now, they have provided the best trading opportunities, VCP breakouts, high and tight flags, 100% plus rallies. That's where we're going to find most of them. You'll see on the list here in April 2021, that's when it started. That's on the left-hand side of this burgundy circle. Core, JRL, NMT, PLS, Galaxy, they were the early ones to break out, and then a bit later on the 30th of May, that's when we started to see the later part of this circle, or the mid part, is when we started to see the orange line that started to move up, and then the whole group started moving as well. That's when we saw the best trades coming through. That was started with Liontown Resources, and then we see the list there, MTC, PLS, SYA, all those exposed in the industry started following suit. We've covered this in detail in a video where we looked at the 12 volatility contraction patterns that broke out over this period. So that's a video that you can see on screen or a link in the description below. And then also volatility contraction patterns, which worked phenomenally well throughout this period. And then this one here in the green circle, you can also see a tutorial on that too. But we're looking here, something that we've touched on before, but this is what we've seen with the clusters of when the lithium companies break out. You can see the dates here of their breakouts. So VCP's volatility contraction pattern, HTF is high and tight flag. So you've got VCP, high tight flag, and then 2 more VCPs in here. So a lot were breaking out throughout this period. We know that they break in clusters, and that's when the RSI is strong that we are seeing. So there's February, we have seen earlier this year. Now we're going to move over to another chart. So as we bring down into the second chart, it's going to cover some proprietary indicators, although that's not needed to understand the message, because for the lithium companies on the ASX over these 2 years on the chart, and we should say that these circles here are the exact same period, highlighted on the other charts. So when we see that the group is falling, but the leaders quickly turn, so that's the top 6 that we saw here in the orange line. When we jump down and see that the leaders turn, so this is the top 6 that we've used here. This is the grey line. When you see that grey line turn, when the rest of the leaders is falling, then that's been a brilliant time to get on board, and that's when we've seen the best. That's when we've seen these. So you see, we're going to have a look at the difference between the grey line, which is the top 6. We're going to see when they're going up and the rest of the group is falling. This is a proprietary indicator that shows that there's a good congestion happening across the whole group, and that the congestion is what's required for a volatility contraction pattern, and that's what's been leading to the breakout. So we move through, and that's what we've covered twice before in these different videos here on screen. So can the lithium rally continue? We did that about a month ago, and then we looked at it about 8 months ago when we looked at the breakouts throughout this burgundy period of all those VCPs. So that's what we've covered in more detail. Now we move over to have a look and see down here what the next leaders are, because when we see the next leaders in the lithium space, we want them to be building their bases now while that market's tanking, while this green line here is falling. So zooming in here, The smaller rallies and then falling back to the baseline is what we want to be seeing. So this massive drop here we saw, which is the group's RSI, that's really just dropping. This is a proprietary RSI that we're using here, but that just drops dramatically. And then when you see the blue lines start rallying up, that's where the trading opportunities are coming in. We saw it tank once more, the group's RSI, that's falling down here. And then the leaders in the group are actually starting to take off. So what that's telling us is that there's a basing pattern occurring, and some of them are starting to shoot out. We know that it can go for about 2.5 months, that it did throughout this period between the first VCP of Liontown towards the later ones, which are actually the large caps. So there's 2.5 months of buying opportunity throughout that period. That's when we saw the group falling and then the leaders start to kick into gear. We've seen the group falling down here in this green line, and then quickly that blue line shoot up to show there's some leaders breaking out. Same thing again, the green line's still trending down, but then we have some spurts in here where some leaders are breaking out. Right now, we have the whole group tanking, but there are actually some small ones in here that are starting to break out. And those small ones that are breaking out right now in May 2022, they're names that we haven't really followed much before in here. They've been a part of the group, but they haven't shot out. We haven't seen them as great trading opportunities. They haven't put huge runs on the board. So the ones that have started to move here and lead the group are not the ones in the burgundy circle, the green circle, or the red circle. They're, in a way, new lithium leaders. While the lithium theme is not new, the leaders within it have become newer names in the last couple of weeks. So that's how we see what's been happening on the market and getting an overview of what happens within the group. But when we look and understand volatility contraction patterns, we want to see how the average RSI is rising. And more importantly, the average RSI stops falling. That's because if you think about it, where the share prices are moving, they start, so if there's a contraction, we're going to try to put one on screen for you so that you can get a good understanding of how that moves. And we're going to use Liontown Resources because that's our favorite. We've used it many times before. And we're going to bring this out to 2 years. Well, there's one on the screen there. So you see 1 contraction, 2 contraction, 3. As it's getting tighter, the one in May last year is even better because it really does congest. Here we go. Bring that out. So you're seeing the drop is getting tighter and tighter. The pullbacks are getting smaller to the point where the pullback barely moves. It sits in really tight, sits on the higher low, doesn't really pull back below this breakout day here or this rally, and then it does break out with volume. That's the critical point here we're seeing with volume. So as we're seeing the RSI compress, not just for one lithium company, but across the whole group, we're seeing the volatility drop. If we zoom in here, the volatility stands out a bit more because that breakout is so big. It shrinks it, but 48 cents down to 33, that's a big contraction. But as it's contracting, getting smaller and tighter, and the volume seems to be dropping off, so we're getting small volume days here, the selling's just really drying up, not much is being pushed down into the market, and then it breaks out. We're getting these buy indicators. So that's the volatility contraction pattern. We're also getting a pocket pivot, if you know Gil Morales and Chris Kacher's trading pattern there. There's a pocket pivot buy, 50-day average and 10-day moving average, volume breakout, off it goes. So whether it's VCPs, Whyckoff Springs, or pocket pivots, we're getting that good understanding when we're tracking this part of the market, when we're seeing how the RSIs compress before they break out. And that's really what the RSI is showing us, is that this is happening not only in the leaders, but when we're seeing it across the whole group, that's when the buying opportunities really present themselves. And history shows that that's when the lithium miners have started their massive breakouts, as we see here with Liontown, that just keeps roaring. And throughout this period here, May through to August, that's when we saw the other ones breaking out as well. So they kept moving and kept pushing higher. Then we look at springs. Now, this part of the market cycle can be more conducive towards springs. We're seeing it a lot in the gold space at the moment, coming back towards previous lows. And we will see more and more of it in the lithium space. So springs are where they come back and sort of retest a low. This is not the best example here, but we've got a low here. The market rallies, doesn't quite get through the highs, and then gets pushed back. It comes down and retests it, but does it temporarily. So there's heavy volume into the low, the prior low, but then what happens is it drops down, does it on big volume, but there's a massive reversal. It shows the inability to close lower on this candle here, this big green candle, and a massive volume. That's a huge reversal day, and because it happens near a prior low, that shows that it's a spring. Then we see the next day, there's not follow through buying, but there's not follow through selling. And because it's an inside day, it doesn't tell us much and doesn't negate the day before. It sort of just pauses on the market. Then we see it gap up. If you think of the range from the low here on this red candle to the open and then the close here, we've still had a pretty big gain, almost similar to this one here, but did it on low volume. So it doesn't show that the volume's coming back yet in huge degrees, but that tells us that there's a spring in play, and then that also builds up for the base and the breakout here for AKE. So we know from the spring here, we're not seeing the huge volume plow back into the market. So we haven't seen with huge conviction. But then when we see it pop up here with a good volume and break that swing high, which is coming up here towards the other spring high here, doesn't quite, swing high I should say, doesn't quite clear it, but does it with good volume, comes back and tries to retest. That's almost a retest, but doesn't get there. Throwback, as Mark Minervini or Thomas Bulkalski would say, and then gets on running. So these are the opportunities that are being highlighted. These are the times when we're told to zero in and focus on the best and the leading part of the market, which is lithium at the moment, or was at the time of the market, and it's indicating that we want to be watching and looking for that turning point in these proprietary indicators. That's all we'll cover on Lithium Leaders at the moment. If you want to be keeping across the best performing shares in the market, so the leading themes and the best companies in it that we're surfacing through these proprietary indicators, you can subscribe to the channel and then click on the bell for the alerts. And we're sending out most days some top trading shares at the end of the day. Those who are already subscribing, thank you, and you can show your support by sharing and liking the video.